Hopkins.
Here.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Craig Arcuri. Dolores Johnson. Karen Kahn.
Here.
Kirk Martin.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment slips?
I have not received any. No, thank you.
Notices that on Thursday, January 14th at 5 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Administration. Next item is the minutes. The recommendation is that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting Wednesday, November 18th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. The consent calendar, we have,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I was actually, had a quick request, hopefully quick request for the secretary, unless somebody has a current commission list, subcommittee list.
it's on the
Could-
back of your,
Oh,
If
you
I
did
printed
bring.
that page.
oh no, it's in your, should be in your folder,
In the
in the very
packet.
back. But here, you can borrow mine for a moment.
Okay, that's fine. I was gonna ask it, get some more copies. Okay, I guess I didn't print that page, I'm sorry
Oh,
for the
okay.
interruption. Okay,
Here, we'll, if I can look on yours.
Sure.
no, that's, okay.
When we get to that. Okay, the next item is the consent calendar. We have a lease agreement with Total Lighting and in the property management report. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. Liaison reports. I see our City of Goleta Liaison Councilmember Michael T. Bennett is here. What do you have to say for us, sir?
Y'all may be aware that the freeway project is almost finished. Almost finished. It's been delayed a little bit by some of the inclement weather, but I was informed just yesterday that things are looking extremely positive, and I was told it's momentary. So however you define that, that's when it's going to open. So thought I'd just pass that on. We're real close, so
Good.
it'll make a big change for all of us that have dealt with this now for the last 18 months.
Thank you very much. Commission matters. So we have the election of officers and the subcommittee assignments. The first is for the chair for next year.
It would be a pleasure to nominate Mr. Hopkins, if he would stand.
I would second that motion. I think he's done an excellent job.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Then may we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
This is going
That-
quick.
The next item is a vice chair. And I've been very pleased with Bruce Miller as my vice chair for this past year, and would like to nominate him again for next year.
I would second that.
Thank you.
Any other nominations? A vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So done. Next item is, if I can look over here on this one, is the subcommittees. Every subcommittee is fully staffed. Are there any changes? Is there anybody on a committee they want off of, or is there anybody who's not on a committee they'd like to be on? Thank you. Then I would request the nomination to leave the subcommittees as they are.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. So done. Administrative reports. The first item is the 6100 Hollister Avenue development. We're going to have a presentation on this.
Yes, Chair Hopkins, we are. Tonight, we've invited Bob Kupiak and Jamie, and I'm not sure if there's other consultants coming, but if they'll come forward and take a seat. This particular development is the first time that the airport's had the opportunity to develop industrial property on its own, with the anticipation of the direct relief project going forward. I understand they're scheduled for City Planning Commission on March 17. And so the closing of that purchase and sale agreement should take place sometime this summer. I'd say July probably, if all goes well. And with that sale, then the airport would receive revenue in which it can reinvest. According to the FAA, the money has to be reinvested into the airport for revenue generation purposes. And so what we wanted to do was develop some industrial property for our niche, small 2,500 square foot units that could be combined if necessary, in accordance with a specific plan that was developed and approved back in 1997. So tonight, I'd like to have our architects present the schematics and get your feedback on our proposed design. Bob, Jamie?
I'm Bob Kupiak of Kupiak Architects, and my collaborator and associate in this job is Jamie Palencia, as the project architect, and thank you for having us. We're happy to be here. We're also happy to be working on what we think is an exciting project for the Santa Barbara Airport. We've been working in league with airport staff and some of our consultants to develop a plan that would, maybe we should just look at, get a little bit of background in the buildings, to develop this site for a series of industrial use buildings that would occupy the Hollister Avenue portion of the property. Why don't you orient
So
us
the
a
first thing
little
we'd
bit?
like to do is just reorient everybody. This is the site, an aerial shot. Obviously, there's Hollister, Love Road, Lopez, and
Patelli?
Keister, Robert Keister Place. This is parcel 22. This is parcel 17. We'll be showing both of you.
Upper right-hand
Both,
corner.
right, at this location. We'll be showing both of these plans shortly. So we're gonna start with parcel 22 down here. This is a site plan. And just to, again, to reorient everyone, down below is Hollister Avenue, Love Place, Lopez Road, and this is the new proposed road, Wallace Becknell Road. Oh, go ahead.
So I think the study that we're going to show you today, I mean, this is kind of the general balancing act between how do you develop a parcel where there are a couple of driving forces in it. One is, how much can you build? How many buildings can there be? That's kind of a product of what support those buildings need in terms of parking, and in terms of water retention and water filtration, which is a serious issue. And I think you'll see as we unveil this design that we've kind of taken that issue very seriously and actually incorporated it into to be really part of a feature of the design.
Right, and so I just really, just quickly wanted to call out some of the details of the project. We have a total of 21 units, two types of units. We have retail, light industrial, and we're totaling roughly under 50,000 square feet total. Retail is located on the left and the right side. In between here and here is light industrial. And there are 4 key points that we wanted to just point out quickly about the site plan. The first thing is that a majority of the parking is along Wallace Becknell Road. And this is allowing us, this is mostly because of the airport guidelines, which says that parking has to be screened. And we're just letting the buildings naturally screen that. The second thing we wanted to talk about is and specifically at the light industrial area, 2 key areas here. We have what we call a receiving court, and we have a paseo. And what we've done with that is that receiving court is sort of your day-to-day. Trucks come in, pull out, we bring things in, we bring things out. We also have chance for dedicated parking in these areas here. Another key thing that we thought long and hard about was is actually a pedestrian paseo between these spaces. And we'll talk about that a little further when we talk when we do a close-up of the industrial area. Another key thing that we wanted to talk about is this meandering path along Hollister Avenue. That's gonna help us attain hopefully our ADA accessibility to the site. And the last thing that I think on this site that is of importance is this retention basin, which Bob touched on. We'll have a presentation from the landscape architect shortly to show you how he artfully sort of disguised that. And I think he did an incredible job. So we'll go ahead and start with one of these clusters or groups to talk about the architecture and what the plan layout looks like. One thing that I just quickly want to describe to you is how the plan is mirrored this way and also this way, and that is repeated throughout the site. So we can kind of speak to the
Yeah, in the next slide, you're going to see these buildings are kind of V-shaped, so that everything is really focused in this issue of bringing people through this paseo where we do our water collection off the roofs of the building. We filter that water down into this central garden area. So, in fact, there's kind of a very pleasant place for people to be who are, pedestrian users of the building, as opposed to this gray area that are on either side, where there are service courtyards that support the kind of commercial activity and industrial activity of those spaces. This separation allows us to do a couple of different things in terms of how you organize all of the traffic that has to flow through the site. We also have the benefit of, really querying people in the real estate community to decide what the matrix of spaces really should be, how big a space would a user want. So we kind of came upon this 2,500 square foot module that started to work in terms of who our client base might be. But we also think that, this is kind of a new development. I think the kind of tenancy that we'll attract will be a kind of higher techie type of tenant that might want to be in this space. And all of those users really want a certain sense of identity. So to that end, I think that this is our wedge-shaped buildings where we're doing all of this kind of water collection into a whole series of downspout gutters that will, have drainage chains that come down into this kind of central area. So we've really kind of taken this idea of how water gets treated and made it a kind of feature of the building. So they not only serve their industrial purpose, but they serve a very environmental purpose as well. And we think that on the Hollister Avenue face, this retention basin can be landscaped in a way that, really makes these buildings face the community in a way that they'll be a very inviting and pleasant thing for people to come and enjoy. Not only work in, but enjoy. So our courtyard, paseo courtyards, which really give us the entrances to the low-end side of the buildings, which is really where the office components or the, of those spaces might be. You can enter into the areas where offices, would be located, and the passageway to come through gives the site some real transparency from one side to the other, and also makes for a very pleasant way for people to come in and out of the new buildings. They're also bookended. So although we have industrial uses here, there really is a visual importance to the corner points. So they're being bookended with a different type of unit that could potentially support some retail or, commercial activity. They really are the same building. We've done a little bit of carving away at the same kind of module that's being developed for the others. And that's kind of to reorient the corners back towards the intersection so that they have a little bit more importance visually as you drive up and down Hollister Avenue. So the retail components would just twist themselves away from the general buildings that would line the rest of the project. And, I think at least we're ready to come and have a cup of coffee. I hope everyone else is too. But we also think that this activity is very worthwhile, especially in the campus community of buildings that are being developed here and the type of userships that's kind of surround this entire property. So we think there's good justification for doing this. And, it's a nice family of buildings as they relate one to another.
I just would point out, too, that in the specific plan, both those corners were set and identified for modest retail, not substantial retail at any means, but minor retail, service delivery type things. And it could either, if it doesn't go retail, it can certainly be commercial,
Right.
industrial.
And all of the buildings are designed to either be 2,500 square foot units or linked together so that they can accommodate larger tenancies, should that be the case. And we like this. There's always a day and nighttime aspect to all buildings. But we think that, along with direct relief, this campus of buildings, could actually be a very pleasant addition to the family of buildings on Hollister Avenue. And, like I said, I think that some of this issue of having these kind of transparent corridors that connect the Hollister Avenue side to the Wallace Avenue.
Becknell.
Wallace Becknell side, really make for, a very pleasant way to organize this, industrial campus.
Yep.
And we're also doing a project in linking in with this, using the kind of similar vocabulary for parcel 17, where there's already a kind of 6,000 square foot building program. We're kind of using the same elements, with the required amount of parking and a service courtyard, so there can be other kind of sales activities. There's been a variety of different user types that we've thought of, but ostensibly it's for storage and for truck access from one side and a public access from the other. And we think that we'll probably be using the same kit of parts that we've established for parcel 22, so that there's an economy to the things that we're doing. We're really trying to replicate a kind of very simple kit of parts and make sure that, if we keep repeating them over and over again, there's an economy of scale to the things that we're up to.
It is
And then
amazing.
I'd like to introduce Derek Eichelberger from Arcadia Studios, who's our landscape architect, who has taken control of, our green space.
Do we have the plan that has any of the photos on it?
Yeah, I have a couple of photos. You want me to go there?
No, not just yet.
Yeah.
I just want to make
I
sure.
have 2 pages.
Yeah,
of-
please.
Hello, my name is Derek Eichelberger with Arcadia Studio, and we are doing the landscape on this project. It's fun to be involved in a project like this when from the very start all of the consultants are sort of rowing in the same direction. Bob and Jamie came up with what I thought was a really innovative, simple design that fits very simply on a very sort of natural landscape. I thought it's very different than a lot of the landscapes you've seen in Goleta. And so I took my cues from that. They actually did the drawing that you saw with a sort of pastoral landscape quasi-stream in front of the project before I was even involved. And when I saw that, it harkened me back to a project that I just finished not too long ago at UCSB, the Ocean Sciences Building, which was all about water retention and percolation on site. And the landscape itself was designed to be exclusively Channel Islands plant materials, so it's all native. And then when we got the civil engineer involved, he came in and started drawing these gigantic swales around the property. We said, whoa, 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 whoa. Can we do this in a little bit more of a more natural fashion? So that's what happened, and he was very obliging, and we went out to the Ocean Sciences Project and took a look out there and go, oh yeah, this looks good, and we can work with this kind of a design component. So what we ended up with, let's see if I can make this work, are these little areas here would be sort of gravel collection ponds, infiltration basins that would have slightly sloped sides to them. And instead of hooking them all up continuously like a channel, there'll be breaks between them. And we have the opportunity to do some slight mounding in between, so we get the quality of up and down natural topography there, which will basically give you the exact design that these guys did the Photoshop work to begin with. So it's a really nice natural landscape in my opinion. And then they asked me to take a look at how we could tie the pedestrian experience along Hollister Avenue more directly back to those little courtyard spaces that Bob was talking about, which occur, uh-oh,
The other one in the front. Another one in
yeah,
there you go.
there we go, right here. So I came up with a meandering sidewalk. The city plate is a 3.5-foot planter along here with a straight sidewalk. I thought it would be really nice if we could actually get some inboard, outboard flow, so you're kind of walking through that landscape as you're going along Hollister. And then where it meets these courtyard spaces, we'd come up with something like this. That space would be extending up this way. So we take that kind of natural stone motif that they've got set up in the courtyards and bring it out here as the intersection point where the sidewalk comes through. And then in between, have the illusion of a bridge that goes over what would be the riparian infiltration zones. We do all natural stone and boulders in those channels, and then it would have kind of a little jog in it where we could have the opportunity for a bench, knowing that Hollister may not be the most wonderful place to sit at particular times of the day, but at least it does have the opportunity to look down that channel into what I know is going to be a really nice landscape. And it also corresponds nicely with what Jamie and Bob are developing here, is some screened-in opportunities for little seating areas. So this is these are a couple of shots of the Ocean Sciences project I was talking to you about. This is along the main beach drive at UCSB. The Bren Center's just in the backdrop. It's down this way. We used the Elemis. The lime grass is sort of the main body of the planting. We've got some Catalina ironwoods, and there's all kinds of achilleas. And here you can see a little bit of hint of the stone channel that you see there. This is taken from the second floor. And this is going to be used by the Channel Islands Institute as an educational learning lab, they have a touch tank, which they haven't got all the funding for yet, for the interior part of the building. And then the exterior will be a guided path system where people can walk through. So we have this little path here that goes through the landscape, and then you can circle back on the sidewalk. Here it is again. So it's really a drainage basin masquerading as a landscape, which is kind of where we're going to be going, at least with the front part of the project at the airport, famous Lot 22. The back is fairly pedestrian, or fairly typical. The parking's sort of driving the configuration of the landscape in the back. The street tree I noticed around the entire project is primarily the Tristania, which I'd probably reuse, and possibly some olives, and mostly lower scale trees. And then we'll have some opportunities for drop-off zones at each of the buildings. So that's the general appearance. Thank you.
We felt pretty lucky to be able to piggyback on the UCSB project, because Derek's already done so much research about how to create a kind of native garden. I mean, these are all water tolerant species of plants that are all indigenous to Santa Barbara. So the idea of having this, it's kind of, we thought it was kind of a no-brainer to kind of, intensify the creation of Santa Barbara in a water retention basin. But, I think we've done everything that we think we can do to take a kind of ecological gesture and turn it into a real part of the architecture and a part of the site. So we're all pretty excited about this as being a kind of a good neighbor on Hollister Avenue.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Any questions, comments? Karen?
Yes, I was just interested in the idea of olive trees, just because I know they're quite messy and high maintenance in terms of providing a lot of drop on the sidewalks, and I think the lower the maintenance we end up with, the
Right.
better.
It'd be the fruitless olive. That's generally what we use in commercial settings.
Right. Glad to hear there is one.
Yeah.
How will the runoff water from the parking area be handled?
That will be collected and actually ends up in our detention basins.
So it'll come to the front of the...
Yeah. I believe, well, Bob, you may know more.
Yeah, we're actually, these paseos that we've created, actually are kind of like giant filtration boxes. So all the water, we're taking, for the benefit of the balance of the property that Direct Relief is taking, we're taking all the water off the new street, all of our water, and it all permeates by pipe through these collection boxes all the way through to the Hollister Avenue side. So it's almost being pre-filtered before it even hits the bioswale retention basin. So we're really doing as much as we can to percolate as much water as we can back into the ground and have it be as clean as possible.
So the water from the parking would actually wind up in the swale along...
Yes, it will.
Along Hollister?
Mhm.
In fact, it was a little frightening when we first saw the diagram the civil engineer showed us, because it was taking about 2/3 of all the landscape space around the buildings just to infiltrate all the water. So we were able to push and pull some of those basins wider than he had.
And
shrink-
deeper,
and
changing
deeper.
depths.
So, yeah, it's worked out quite well.
Any other comments?
I was going to say, I don't believe we've taken action tonight, but this did come to the lease review committee, and we reviewed the drawings and some of the other details. And I think it's a really exciting project. It looks great. It'd be great to get something, in that site. And also, as I think Rebecca points out often, this footprint is kind of or this type of space is really kind of our bread and butter, tenant in there, that sort of space. So I think it's really a great project.
Kirk, do you have anything to say?
I would echo Commissioner Miller that we were excited about it. We liked the inviting nature of it. The fact that it can qualify well for LEED certification. And I think that's important for the public to know. There will be use of some skylights and that sort of thing here in the buildings. And there was a lot of talk about coffee.
Thank you very much. I certainly agree that it looks like an excellent project. It looks like it will be very nice looking as well. And I think the water retention is extremely important and extremely well done. So thank you very much.
Just as an aside, I'd like to say, we have had just the greatest time working with airport staff and the cooperation that we've had in terms of meetings and to talk creatively and problem solve together. It just has really been great. So, we like great clients. And
We think they're
you
pretty
may be one
great
of
too.
them.
Yep.
We do
It's
too.
exactly what we would have expected. Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank
Thank you, Bob. Jamie.
The next item on the agenda, item number 8, is the Las Vegas and San Pedro Creek Capacity Improvement Project. We'll receive a report from the Santa Barbara Flood Control.
Absolutely. Since we are having a touch of rain, we're not flooding yet, but we did get some rain. As our liaison from Goleta, Councilman Bennett, pointed out, 101's been under construction for some time, and John and his group have played a major role in this project. So that also impacts the airport, land on the airport. And so I thought it would be good for Airport Commission to have a presentation from John Fry, who's an engineering manager with Santa Barbara County Flood Control District. John, thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to give an update. Thank you for inviting us. And the architects just stole my thunder because I wanted to be the first to thank Director Johns and her highly capable staff. It's just been great working with them. And when I suggested I'm here to describe our project by our, I mean County Flood Control, I mean the Santa Barbara Airport, the City of Santa Barbara, Caltrans, Union Pacific Railroad, City of Goleta. This is truly a regional type project. So this is an overview. And let's see here, going down to the next slide. I presume it's a page down thing
No,
here.
Arrow.
Okay, what did you do? That's okay. Use the tab. It's okay.
We just got a preview.
All right.
Tab. Oh, this?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank goodness for technical people. I'd never get through these otherwise. Okay, so an overview of the project. Well, let me start by pointing out the picture in the upper left-hand corner, kind of small, but that's a picture from 1998, I believe, which is when the gears started churning for the ideas of this project, 1998. Here we are in 2016, so 18 years later, we are nearing the completion of a project that started back then. The project objective is to try to reduce flooding, mostly on the upstream side of Calle Real. There's residential neighborhoods and some commercial areas, and the highway itself, which historically suffered inundation often.
Could I ask a question while you have that slide up?
Yes,
So
sir.
the
Now, I
prior
may need
slide.
help getting back up here.
Uh-oh.
Let's see here.
That one would work too.
Okay.
Can you just kind of orient us? So these are all undergrounded on the north side of the freeway, is that right? Or
Well,
are they-
yeah, in fact, this is a good slide just to land on because this describes what the project is. Project was basically broken down into three elements, with Project A being what Caltrans did within their right-of-way. That's, I think, what was updated earlier in the meeting tonight by Mr. Bennett. They funded the design and construction of what they're working on right now. That's basically Project A. Those are basically two bridges that cross the highway, significantly increasing the conveyance capacity of Las Vegas Creek and San Pedro Creek. Project B is immediately downstream of the highway at the railroad. Those bridges also were undersized, and so Project B was a significant upgrade of those bridges. And Project C is basically everything that's upstream and downstream of the Caltrans and the Union Pacific right-of-ways.
I just might point out, the green area that you see, that's Twin Lakes Golf Course, just for identification purposes, and you can tell the Lot 2, our parking lot, Lot 2, right off of Hollister, to kind of give you an idea of the location.
Thank you for pointing that out. And please interrupt me with questions if you have any, otherwise I'll just keep on going. Overall schedule, as reported earlier, we're nearing the end here. The Union Pacific Railroad bridges are in. They were constructed in the summertime. Caltrans is nearing completion, and they will be completed. The information we had was in May, but they've got a lot of minor stuff that really won't be affecting the traveling public as much as what the traffic detours have been for the past 12, 18 months. The Project C, which I described as the conform grading and the flood wall, our contractor is just at the tail end of that project as well. The major remaining element of the work is what we're calling the transition structure. That will be built next summer. We had to wait for Caltrans to complete their work on San Pedro Creek at Calle Real, and then we will go in and complete the rest of the transition of the newly constructed San Pedro Creek channel to the existing channel, which is upstream at Calle Real. So that's what the transition structure project will be. That'll be this summer. That'll be completed before the next winter comes along. And when that happens, then the entirety of the project will be completed.
John, you might tell them how big the retaining wall is, or the flood wall.
Okay. One of the mitigation measures that became a fairly major part of this project, and I do have pictures of it, so
okay.
maybe I can get to it. In fact, before I get to those pictures, let me stop on this slide just for a moment. One of the processes that the project involved was the acquisition of some easements that the city granted to flood control for the San Pedro portion of the project downstream of the Union Pacific Railroad Bridge. And the map in the background is kind of hard to read, but the reason I included it on the slide was because when that map was prepared, I believe in the early 2000s, it already anticipated at that time the granting of easements to flood control for this project. There was a lot of foresight there on the part of the airport district to show that. The color slide in the bottom left basically just matches where those easements were shown on the black and white map. We did add one additional easement. It's shown in yellow in that color slide, if you can see that. And that provides us with an access to get from the creek more directly over to Frederick Lopez Road. So I was told just yesterday that these easements have been executed. So that's another great milestone. Okay, so just a couple pictures of the three projects. Project A being Caltrans. Of course, these pictures were taken several months ago, and they're no longer current. In the upper left there, I think these blocks drew a whole lot of attention, at least they did to us. They were lightweight blocks that Caltrans designed into their project, with the thinking being that it would exert less load on their bridge. That's the off-ramp for Fairview Avenue in the southbound direction there, upper left-hand corner. Wow. So the lightweight blocks were their technique to reduce the structural requirements of the bridge, presumably saving money in the long run. So that's what that is. In the lower right-hand corner, I believe, is a picture of Las Vegas Creek, standing near that upper picture in the upper left, looking at the Union Pacific Bridge on the right-hand side of that picture there. So anyway, all the agencies involved in this multi-jurisdictional project, without the cooperation and the participation of any one of those agencies, this project wouldn't have gone. So that's why we're very appreciative. Project B was the railroad portion of the project. The railroad was our partners. They constructed, they designed and constructed. Flood control paid for the design and the construction. You can see the before and after pictures for both the San Pedro Creek and the Las Vegas Creek. Significant upgrades to those bridges. It was quite an operation to watch too, I might add. They come in and they knock those bridges out basically in a heartbeat. And this is Project C, the flood wall, the conform grading, and the upper two pictures, upper right in particular, is the flood wall that was referenced earlier. The picture on the upper left is the before picture, and the reason for the flood wall is because as the bridges were upgraded across Calle Real, across 101, and across the Union Pacific Railroad, the creeks were able to maintain more of the flow that was within their watershed. One of the problems pre-project was that the culverts were so small that the drainage in the creek, San Pedro, would back up upstream at Calle Real and work its way over to Las Vegas Creek. So that's why there was that big ponding in the first picture I showed back in 1998. So anyway, when the bridges were upgraded to improve the conveyance capacity, San Pedro maintained more of its own flow. And so to mitigate that and to stay in conformance with FEMA, the flood wall is required to make sure that we did not perhaps solve a problem upstream of Calle Real, but then cause a problem downstream of the railroad bridges. So that's pretty much a guiding fundamental approach for us. So that was the reason for the flood wall. And the pictures on the bottom there are of the Twin Lakes. I want to give another shout out to the golf course operators themselves as well, very cooperative the entire way through here. And we ran into a bit of an issue with the lakes themselves. The golf course had obtained a permit from the state back in, I believe, 1985, quite a while ago, to divert water from San Pedro Creek, and that's what fed these lakes. Well, when this project came along and improved the bridges, on the San Pedro side, there was a concrete drop of about 5 feet immediately downstream of the railroad bridge, which came out. That lowered the creek. It helped improve things to push more water through there. But in doing so, we lost the gravity feed over to the Twin Lakes. So the golf course was kind enough, because we were prepared to put in a pumping system and try and make them whole. But they decided that they would rather drain the lakes, fill the lakes in with dirt, and make a waste area. That's a golf term, a waste area. And they think that accommodates their golfers better than the lakes. So the picture on the bottom right is the newly graded waste area.
So is there only one lake at the golf course now?
There's no lakes anymore.
So
There's two waste
are they
areas.
going
Sand
to
trap.
rename that?
I don't know if they're going to rename it or not.
No.
Waste golf course.
The picture, this is the last slide. The pictures on the top are of the storm event we had a couple weeks ago, I believe it was January 5th. The picture on the left is San Pedro Creek standing on the Caltrans right-of-way looking downstream. So that flood wall we were looking at a slide or two earlier is on the right bank. That's the railroad bridge that we're looking at there. And the picture on the right side is Las Vegas Creek. That's standing on the golf course looking upstream towards the Caltrans. You can see that fill slope, the southbound off-ramp there. We got really good feedback from Mr. Lee, the golf course operator. He was very pleased with how this thing behaved. I was a little personally surprised that so much water was flowing, but there was one heck of a thunderstorm band that came through there, and it really dumped there for about a half hour on that morning. And the graphics on the bottom of this slide, this project actually just won. The awards ceremony is tonight up in the Santa Maria area, a local chapter of the American Public Works Association Project of the Year Award. So we're pretty happy, and again, these projects don't get done without everybody involved. There's just no way. So again, years and years of coordination and a lot of good people involved. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Any comments, questions?
Well, it looks like a great project. So you've increased the capacity up in this area, so I guess the obvious question is, how is it downstream? I take this creek then goes under like Verhall Bridge and onward, and was that all mitigated over the last few years in those projects down there?
I want to get back to a slide, because that's a great question. And I probably won't get back to that slide. So just let me explain. The golf course. The golf course is kind of what I refer to as ground zero, okay? Because upstream of the golf course, the hydraulic conditions are pretty much dictated by what's going on upstream. Downstream of the golf course, the hydraulic conditions, in other words, how bad does it flood, is pretty much dictated by downstream conditions. The tide, the slough. So to really simplify things, we could, and I'll exaggerate, we could build a downstream channel that is 1,000 feet wide. And to a certain extent, it doesn't do a lot of good simply because, and I am exaggerating, but because of the downstream conditions. And so the golf course, even after this project, it's going to continue to see water. It's kind of a natural water collecting area. And I don't want to say this in front of the golf course people, but I'd probably rather see water on the golf course rather than in the developed commercial areas. But from downstream, from the golf course downstream, not to say that there couldn't be an improvement project to help things along, but it would be a fairly substantial project. It would have to likely go all the way down to the slough. And because of the conditions down at the slough, there are certain things that you can just never mitigate for up in this area here.
But do keep in mind that after the flood of 95 and 98, when it shut the airport down, we did work with FAA and did a flood study or a drainage study on the airport. And as a result of that study, one of the construction projects that we did was to change out the bridge that led to Deckers, the old Deckers building, where we had pilings in the creek. And then we put in Verhill Bridge, which is a span bridge, is that correct? Span bridge. So there's no pilings in there. So it opened up that creek bed so that the water could continue to flow, whereas in 95 and 98, those pilings, we had debris collecting there. We also had, just on the north side of Hollister in San Pedro Creek, the Goleta Sanitary District had a pipe that was in the creek, and we worked with them to relocate that pipe out of the creek also to open it up. So there have been, in addition to what the County Flood Control has worked with us on, the airport has also worked with other agencies and to hopefully improve the flow as it goes down to the beach. And of course, having the mouth of the slough open to receive the flow is kind of important.
And so, does this reduce the risk of the potential for flooding around our beloved historic hangars at the corner there?
It should reduce it somewhat.
Okay. Don't want anything to happen to those.
No.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next and I think last item is the director's report.
I just have a few items to bring to your attention, one of which is not on my report, but I did want to share with you that on Saturday, this Saturday, January 23rd, from 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there will be a celebration for John Clark, Airport Commissioner. It's being held at the Ovington Terminal. And if you have time to stop by and speak well or speak bad, whichever, of John Clark, I think that would be well received. Additionally, just to point out traffic, airline traffic, of course, December was down. We're still having that offset with Frontier because we're looking at December numbers. But I did want you to know that the existing carriers are still doing better this year, this month, than they were the same month last year. So there is growth, and we will eventually start seeing that creep up after January. I think January's numbers that you'll see in next month should show just a creeping up of passenger traffic. United has brought in, and as you probably have noticed, the Embraer 175. It's a really nice aircraft. It has first-class seats, and everyone just raves about it. So we're having that flight to Denver. We also have a couple of them to San Francisco. And I understand that American will also be bringing that plane in, as will Alaska. So that's going to be beneficial for us. So with that, unless you have other comments or questions on the director's report, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
Just a question about the restaurant. It looks like it's doing really well. Are there any preliminary reports, or is this?
The High Sierra restaurant? They are doing very well, I think, for lunch and dinner, especially. They seem to have big crowds coming in. Breakfast, I think, on weekends for their brunch. I understand they do have, since I'm not out here Saturday and Sunday, a good crowd there. During the week, breakfast is still kind of slow. But overall, I think they certainly are putting the time in to train the staff, to get their menu refined, and working very hard at doing that. So it looks successful. no numbers yet.
I'd like to comment that my wife and I have eaten there 3 times so far.
Whoa.
The last being the Experimental Aircraft Association and 99s had a joint meeting in their back room that was extremely well done. It was an excellent, we had a great time at the meeting, but the staff, the restaurant handled it very, very well. We had
Excellent.
30 people. You could probably easily have gone up to 40, maybe 45. And they did an outstanding job. So I would certainly highly recommend it for any club or organization in that general number of people to call over there and make some reservations, because
Very good.
it's very nice to have an opportunity like that to meet there.
Great. And that is one of the benefits of that building, as we know, is larger than a lot of restaurants would be. But having that banquet space or the meeting space is really important and was used heavily when it was the Elephant Bar. So hopefully those groups will come back. Good.
I had a question. If you could remind us, what are the next steps on the master plan? The EIR comment period did close a couple months ago, and what's next?
We are doing, going through chapter by chapter where we had comments, and the consultant and Andrew Vermont, our planner, are preparing responses for that. There was also some additional data needed to be collected on our traffic study. So we're working with the city of Goleta and their consultant and having their model run a couple of different ways. And that information needs to be completed so it can be incorporated into the final document. I'll make a point of having Andrew, as soon as we get close to releasing the final, come back to Airport Commission with a report.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other
Hearing
questions?
no other questions or comments, we are adjourned.
Thank you.